Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I did not introduce myself earlier. My name is Rachel Johnson. I'm with One Click Contractor, and I'm really glad to be joined today by two amazing presenters. We have Josh Carter and Bill Phillips. Josh is joining us as the marketing manager at Hatch, and Bill Phillips, one of my colleagues, is joining us from One Click Contractor. I'm going to brag on Bill a little bit because you're joined by a veteran in the home improvement space. Bill has spent over 40 years in the home improvement space, working for big brands like Home Depot, as well as owning his own business, specifically related to interior remodeling and design. And so he has done both exterior of the home and interior, and has run rehash programs himself and been the rehasher. So we are joined. Bill is going to share some of his candid strategies today that has made him and the businesses that he works with extremely successful. I'm going to go over the housekeeping details real quick before I turn the call over to our presenters. So as I mentioned before, all participants will be in listen-only mode, which means that you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. So if you wish to ask a question, please use the chat feature or the Q&A feature located on the right-hand side of your screen. This presentation will be recorded today, so we will be sending that out after the presentation. And without further ado, I am going to turn the call over to Josh to give us a little insight into who's actually watching today.
All right. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are dialing in from today. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited about today's webinar. Rehash is really integral for all your businesses, and we're going to share some really key ways for you to do it right. So looking at today's attendees, we've got a lot of folks, both interior and exterior contractors, a lot of folks, window installers, exterior remodeling, roofing. This webinar is going to be for you. The strategies that we talk about today are going to be relevant to you guys and where you work. So we're really excited to share that with you today. So quick housekeeping, here's what we're going to cover today. Some common challenges with rehash programs, some pitfalls, things to avoid as you start a rehash program in your business or optimize your rehash program. We're going to talk about some ways to make rehash successful for your business. And then we're going to also talk about how you can organize your team to be successful for rehash. It's one thing having the tools in place. You've got to shift your team to be focused on rehash, or at least one person on your team to be focused on rehash, because rehash can really improve that close rate for your business. And of course, the last piece is arguably one of the most important, is closing strategies. You get the lead, you get them engaged, you get them biting on the quote. Let's make sure that we're closing them effectively. So I'm excited. Thanks, Bill, for joining us today. Really excited. Thanks for coming on board.
Thank you. Look forward to presenting.
Cool. So we're going to launch a poll real quick. How would you describe your rehash program today? So I'm going to start polling now. Let us know how your rehash polling is progressing today in your business, if you have one. And we'll share the responses. I'm really curious to see these. So open the poll. Let us know how you describe your rehash program today. Looks like some folks don't rehash at all. Looks like a lot more folks are rehashing. This is good news. Yeah, what's great about the webinar today, guys, is if you don't have a rehash program in place today, we're going to talk about how to get you started. And if you do have one, we're going to share some ways to make that better, help you increase that close rate. So it's going to be jam-packed with some good stuff today. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. All right, so we've got, I'm not able to share the results, but we got 15% of you guys don't rehash at all. 8% of you guys do it whenever you have time, which isn't very often. 46% of you guys, so a bulk of the folks on the webinar today, say they have great intentions, but the daily business issues usually keep it from happening. And that's something, Bill, I know you're going to touch on in a bit. So that's really good that we've got a lot of folks with that issue, because we're going to talk about how to overcome that today. So a little bit about Hatch. Hatch is a home improvement messaging platform that uses a combination of text, email, phone, and voicemail to help you and your team get in front of homeowners and close more deals. We automate a lot of your sales follow-up process, whether that be when a lead comes in on your website or Home Advisor or Modernize, and also when you need to rehash somebody you quoted. It's all done automatically in Hatch. So you're able to focus on your business and then jump into the conversation whenever someone responds. And we've got a partnership with One Click Contractor, and One Click Contractor is a really cool business, Bill. Really love what you've done with the business.
Well, thanks, Josh. And for everyone there, Bill Phillips, One Click Contractor, thanks for having me on. We have developed what we call the only all-in-one virtual sales productivity platform. Another way to say that is we have digitized the kitchen table or the entire sales process for remodelers and home improvement contractors. We've done that with a cloud-based service, so everything is always available anytime, anywhere, which is very important for when we talk about Rehash, having, in essence, a digital job folder that your people inside the business, your salespeople, and the people doing Rehash can access at any time. And the good news is we work on any device. So if you've got laptops or iPads or Android devices in the field, and you've got desktops in the office, it doesn't matter. We have full access to the tool. So in essence, Josh, and I think this is where we got excited about the partnership is, Hatch takes it and gets you the opportunity, and One Click then gives you the software that helps you close that sale. So as you can see here, we have the virtual platform that streamlines your entire sales process from measurement to estimating to getting paid. And then Hatch centralizes and automates your sales conversations across text, email, and phone. When we get into the presentation, you're going to see where probably the two biggest failure points are going to be addressed by these opportunities. And what you'll hear also today is it's just not about technology. It's always going to be about methodology.
Yep.
The sales process is going to be a little bit different. How you organize yourself is going to be a little different. If you really want to make something go with Rehash, you got to think about it as a different process within the business.
And Hatch, we started as a consulting organization for a window company here in Richmond, and our strategy with that window company was, how do we help them increase their close rates? So what we did is we started implementing a Rehash program for the business, and the result was $400,000 in the first 60 days just by doing Rehash. So after helping companies with Rehash and building a product around messaging homeowners around Rehash, we found that the average home improvement contractor, both interior and exterior, sees around a 7 to 10% increase in close rate after implementing Rehash, an effective Rehash strategy in the organization. A combination of the tools, the technology, and the methodology that we're going to talk about today can make a big difference in your close rate. And you can actually crunch the numbers for yourself at youthatchapp.com/ROI to see what Rehash would mean for your business in real dollars.
So one of the important things to do is decide, what leads we're going to rehash and how do we do that. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on that and get into more detail later. But what is a rehash lead? And I think everybody, regardless if you say you have a rehash program or not, you're rehashing leads. Either they're staying with your salespeople and you're expecting your salespeople to call back those customers and continually follow up, or you have a little bit more of a formal program that's done inside the business, and those phone calls and sales calls are made from a remote basis. So how do you get a rehash lead? Well, the first thing you have to do is decide, is it going to stay with the sales force, or am I going to take it away after a certain amount of time? We'll see one of the big failure points is with salespeople and their desires, but versus their execution. But in our essence, what we've said is limit the time a salesperson can close that before it becomes a rehash lead. And then Josh will share some information about how that timing is very important. Next thing is to check the notes. Make sure you've got all the information available that you can work with that customer so it's complete, the file's complete, everything's in there that you need to know, so that when you do call the customer, and most times it's going to be somebody meeting them for the first time on the phone or through a video chat, do they have enough information that they can go ahead and present from a professional standpoint? And then the third thing is making sure that always, just from a strategy standpoint, working the most recent jobs first, and the ones that you've had the most recent communication with. Those are going to be the warmest, hottest leads. And again, the longer you wait, the less you're going to close. The quicker you go, the faster you're going to close.
Yep, time is money. And what we found here at Hatch is that if you don't get to the lead within 48 hours after you quote them, your chances are going to drop by below 20%. So you've got to get to the lead fast. As everyone knows, your leads are shopping around for different quotes. You've got to make sure you follow up and have that professional sales follow-up process, that rehash process in your business to execute on quickly, so you don't lose that lead. In fact, we were looking at the data here. 50% of your competitors aren't following up with these quoted leads. Sales reps are busy. They move on to the next job, move on to the next appointment. And it's important that you're following up, because a lot of your competitors aren't doing that. And the good news is that 62% of leads that don't buy immediately will end up buying in the next 12 months. So it's important that you have your information available to them for easy access. And here at Hash, we believe texting is really integral part of this rehash process. It's proven to be super effective, which is how our customers have seen a 7 to 10% increase in close rate by incorporating these messaging strategies and overall rehash strategy into their business. So it's really important that you give your customers an easy way to talk to you as well.
So what are the challenges with rehash programs? We've kind of boiled it down to four basic issues that seem to crop up over and over again. The first one, I think, is the big reason is we all have good intentions. And I think, Josh, based on the feedback from the poll, 46% of the people out there said, I want to do a rehash program. I've got great intentions, but the business just gets in the way. And guys, that's so common. It's common if you're a national company or if you're a small remodeling company, whatever you're doing. It's so common to get into it. And boy, I lived it. I just sold my remodeling business back in December, and I have always had these great intentions of everything. And we were successful and had a great reputation, but every day was a battle. Every day was a struggle, and the things that were easy to put off to the side got put off to the side, and unfortunately rehash kind of fits in that bucket. One of the big challenges is salespeople are natural hunters, and so if you're depending on your salespeople to call back, you may get a call back at least a couple days later or whatever, but their instincts are to go ahead and they'd much rather close a new customer than trying to nurture an old one. So you really need that process to understand how to nurture those contracts of those customers and turn them into new prospects, if you will. Using some of the tools you'll see today, that's really easy, but it's incredibly important to understand that rehash is kind of farming, where new sales calls and everything like that is hunting. So a little bit of a different, where you have to kind of nurture everything along as it goes before you get that opportunity to get back in, either into the home or making that call virtually. Next challenge is there's not enough information, or technically no information. If you're still using paper, using job folders, using paper contracts, whatever it may be, spreadsheets to estimate, question is, how do you get that all back into a rehash person so that they can initiate that process? Really difficult to do. One of the things you'll see with One Click is that we've digitized that entire job folder. And again, as I said earlier, it's always available. So always going to be proper. You know exactly what's been quoted to the customer, what kind of pictures have been taken. Everything's going to be in that job folder so that you can look at it at any time. Next one we've just talked about. We just get busy. We have great intentions. Work gets in the way. Challenges, fires come up. We end up going through there. If you don't have something that's an organized process or a structure that allows you to not have to spend as much time on it as you probably could, then it's going to basically get put off to the side. And honestly, it is one of the easiest things to put off. There's a lot of things to do with making sure materials on the job site, that your installers are going to be showing up, that you got everything scheduled, your customers have been communicated to, there's everything's moving forward. Besides that, the next thing I got, okay, I'll make those calls, but before I realize it, at 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm done. Okay, time to go on the next day. And the last one is kind of, I'm not sure how to close a rehash deal. Is it the same as a sales call, or is it different? It's going to be a little bit different, but a lot of the same components. How do I ask for the order? I mean, how do I go back in there now that I've got that opportunity again to talk to the customer? Is it any different than the first time the salesperson was in there? And then do I offer an additional discount? Being a little confusing and not coming across as confident or professional in how you're making that call can really make an impact on your close rate. So how do customers see your rehash process? Do they see it as something that's smooth and professional and everything's tied together? Has the communications in the front end been solid, been consistent, everything's tied out, all the way down to the actual presentation where it's very clear that you know exactly what the salesperson did in the home, and can go ahead and replicate that sales call in essence virtually with that customer. One of the things we've talked about is you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And honestly, if you do have a rehash program that's organized outside of the sales organization or outside that salesperson, you are making a first impression when you do get that customer on the phone and trying to rehash that job. So really important to understand that everything that you do from that point forward, from either the initial conversation, be it email, text, or phone, all the way through to the sales presentation, and you're going to be evaluated on how well that looks and the professionalism involved. As well, we've talked about methodology needs good technology. And I think what you'll see today is we've got some great technology to help you have an awesome and a very robust rehash program. You sure as heck wouldn't want to pull up into somebody's house driving a truck like this. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing from a technology and methodology standpoint exhibits the the brand new F350 with the shiny rack on the back and everything. And like we're willing to say and happy to say is that technology alone won't win you the job, but it can cost you the job. So making sure technology is supporting your work processes and your methodology to make sure that you're closing as many sales as possible. And in how do you create a winning rehash program? Well, the first thing is, and I think this is the core of what we're trying to do here, is develop a repeatable, scalable, and consistent process structured for rehash. The rest of the call going forward is going to be covering all that. And there are 3 keys to an effective rehash program. Josh, did you want to cover those? Okay. So let's just go through it. So the leads indicated they are still interested. I think this is what you're going to find. I think if there's one of the big failure points of any rehash program is that the calls aren't made. They may make 1 call, they may make 2 calls, they may send an email. But if you're working with Hatch, what you're going to see is that you're going to get a very thought out and programmed communication strategy with that customer. You're touching them when you want to touch them, how you want to touch them, with the right message every single time. I think you've seen from the charts that Josh and the stats that Josh has presented is that they can take those leads and turn them into a customer that's still interested in purchasing. The next step is to make sure all your job data from the initial sales call is assembled in one place. If you are on the One Click platform for your sales consultants on the initial call, there's nothing to do. It's already going to be there. It's going to be so easy. All you got to do is log in. As the administrator, you can see every sales job. You can go ahead and pull up all the information. You're going to see the measurements. You're going to see the photos. You're going to see the notes that have been made on the job. You're going to see any estimates that have been created. You're going to see any proposals that have been done. You can go into the history tab and see how long they did the presentation that they were supposed to present. You can see what sales collateral they used and presented to the customer. So you really get a huge snapshot of everything that was done in the home or over the phone with that customer, all was inside One Click Contractor and available for you at any time. And then the third thing is having the right message and sales process. And this is really honing in on your methodology. My experience with Home Depot was with, one of the largest remodeling contractors. We were a subsidiary of Home Depot doing roofing, siding, windows, gutters, insulation, and things. And so we had, 1,100, 1,200 salespeople around the country. And then we realized that, letting the salespeople follow up on their leads and their what we called sit-no sales was good, but most of them didn't do it and didn't do it very well. We had a few guys that were superstars and we just left them alone, and they would close, 30% of their sales were going to be, as we called sit-no sales, or sales after the initial presentation. But most of them wouldn't do it. And our close rate on a sit-no sale, so we've made the presentation, now we've gone back and tried to resell it, was less than 5% using the sales consultants as that tool. So we went back and reprogrammed everything and looked at it and significantly impacted that number to where it was a very positive lift for the business. And I'll tell you, it was definitely more than the 10% that you would normally see. So having that structure, but then we faced many of the same problems we just talked about. We didn't have One Click Contractor and we didn't have Hatch. So our consistency of execution was the challenge. And that's where we'll talk about your methodology and how you can basically put that on steroids using Hatch and One Click.
I love that story, Bill. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. So really there's 6 steps for you to execute Rehash. The first step is having a communication strategy in place after there's a sit-no sale, after somebody is quoted and didn't buy. And the next step is going to be familiarizing yourself with the customer information like Bill talked to earlier, having a good understanding as to, what the customer's interested in, were there any objections at the time you were giving the quote, all that good stuff. Make sure you're familiarized with yourself. And running in the background throughout all of this is a Rehash campaign. So as soon as you have somebody that is sit-no sale, you launch them in that Rehash campaign, multi-step, and we'll touch on the messaging strategy there. You launch them in that Rehash campaign and it runs as you work other leads. So it's all running in the background. And that's one of the benefits of Hatch is that you can automate all that entire Rehash process. Go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead.
Oh. And then, of course, the pre-qualification call. And we're going to touch on how to properly do a pre-qualification call to set those expectations once you get that lead to bite, that lead to respond. And the next piece is virtual presentation to close the deal. One Click does a great job at helping folks execute on that virtual presentation. And then, of course, we love the last 2, right? Collect money and count your money, count your found money in the bank. And, it's important that while you're working deals, while you're working Rehashed folks, that you're continually evaluating folks that are eligible for Rehash. So we're going through this process, rinse and repeat. So you see step 1 here, launch your communication strategy. So as soon as somebody comes in and, you quote them, they don't bite on that quote, make sure that you're continually putting into this rinse and repeatable Rehash process so you can just, let this work for you and work for your business. And so that communication strategy, what does that look like? It's a combination of texting, emailing, calling, leaving voicemails. And this is an effective Rehash campaign that we do for our customers, and we're offering for you to run one for free today. What we'll do is we'll take 50 of your leads that you quoted and didn't buy, and we'll run a free Rehash campaign where it will be a combination of texting, emailing, voicemails. We'll work with you on messaging, make sure it's aligned to your business. You just click go and you'll watch the leads come in. And it's important that everything that you do with Rehash is not just using email or not just using a phone call. It's also incorporating text messaging, bringing all these together and automating that follow-up process. So an example of this would be on the first day, the day after the appointment, you send a text and an email resurfacing that quote. If they don't respond, send a text message. And then on the day 4, wait 2 days, send a text message, send an email. So this process, this multi-step process is super important to get leads to respond. I can't stress this enough. The amount of folks that we work with that previously would give up on a lead after texting or emailing them once. Right, Bill? I mean, I'm sure that you've experienced that. It's the art of the follow-up, right?
It is so critical, Josh. We did some surveys and some studies in my few years in Home Depot where we were actually executing this pretty well. And it really, one of the feedbacks from the customers was that it was evident that we were important to you because of the amount of communication we got. As long as the communication isn't obtrusive and gets in the way and they feel like you're hounding them, and by the way, text messages usually don't feel that way. It can be a very effective medium in letting the customer know that you are important to us. We are interested in your business. And when you think about most of your competitors are not doing this on a consistent basis, then you're going to stand out. This is going to give you an opportunity to shine and to make sure that you are communicating to that customer and letting them know that, hey, we can still do this for you. And it does make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at one of our roofing customers, roofing contractors, and looking through their Rehash campaign in preparation for this webinar. And a majority of the leads that ended up buying didn't respond to the Rehash campaign until touch 3, where they got 3 text messages and they said, "Oh, sorry, I was busy. Life happens." So as things open back up and folks are getting out of the house, they're going to be more busy. You want to make sure that you get in front of them, right? And I'm going to give you guys an example of that actually working for one of our customers. I anonymized this, but this is a true exchange that happened. The text went out as soon as the person was quoted, didn't indicate any buying signals. And we say, "Hi, Josh, this is Chris from ABC Windows. Great to meet you earlier today. I sent a quote to your email. Have any questions?" So this was automatically sent after the quote, but the lead did not respond. So our system automatically sent another text message that said, "Hey, just left you a voicemail. Due to recent events, we have a lot of inventory on hand and would like to offer you a 15% discount if you're able to get your windows installed by April 30th. This was back in March, guys, when the pandemic was in full swing. And at the time, this customer had a lot of inventory on hand, and I was trying to get deals closed. And we helped them weather the storm and actually come out on top when many of the companies that they were competing against had to shut their doors. So it's really important that you're following up these leads as soon as you quote them, and then try to surface the objection. And that's what they did. So the objection got surfaced, and we'll talk about objection handling in a bit, but he says, "Yes, but it's too expensive for us right now." So as soon as you get that objection, then you're able to actually jump in to the conversation and figure out, how do we want to handle this objection? And when we talk about later on in the webinar how to structure your team for Rehash, this is when it becomes really important. So if you have a sales rep, maybe a younger sales rep, not very experienced on handling objections, you want to make sure you're able to tag in the right folks for that. So the example of this is they had their sales manager actually in Hatch able to jump into the conversation and get tagged into the conversation by the sales rep. And the sales manager said, "Hey, look, I understand the concern. With the recent federal interest rate cut, we can offer you financing for $0 down with 0% interest. Your monthly payments would just be $75. What do you think?" And in this exchange that I believe this was a window contractor in the Midwest, I think it was Kansas. They got the lead to actually get on the phone with them and said, "Yeah, give me a call. Let's talk about it." And they ended up closing the job in the next week. So it was a really cool exchange to see, basically from close to start, how that lead progressed through that Rehash process. And again, they didn't respond until the second text that went out. So it's really important to continually follow up with these leads after you quote them. And then the next step is going to be making sure your team is organized for Rehash. And it's great to have a messaging strategy in place, but you've got to make sure you build your team out to execute on Rehash, execute on objection handling, make sure you're handing the leads off to the right folks in your team. And there's really 3 types of models that folks use to handle Rehash. The most popular one is having someone dedicated to Rehash. I know, Bill, you were essentially a Rehash rep in a previous life, right?
Well, being the owner of a small company that we were growing rapidly, yes, I wore that as one of my many hats. But having to be having salespeople and designers going out to homes and then having somebody to try to follow up, that was many times felt to me. So this is why this whole webinar is dear to my heart, because I know the struggles that everybody faces on a daily basis. But having somebody designated within the business to do that, even if it's yourself and making the time, is incredibly proper. But to Josh's point, if you have the availability of resources to invest in this, it will pay back in spades.
Yeah, no doubt. And then the second model is that sales manager owner model, where they're the ones that are responsible for overseeing the Rehash process, making sure they're jumping into the conversations. Like I talked about earlier, guys, of where we had the objection surfaced about pricing. That sales manager was able to jump in. So it's important that, whatever model you choose, whether it be this having a dedicated rep responsible for Rehash and handing off the leads to the right people, or having the owner have that bird's eye view and able to jump in, or even a call center model, which is, for the larger organizations that have a call center, handling all the folks that respond to these rehash campaigns and then handing them off to the right sales reps. Whatever method you use, it's important to have visibility and accountability into how you handle rehashed leads. And I'll show you what that looks like real quick inside of Hatch, where we actually have a lead that comes in through the inbound column. This is the Hatch workspace, where the left-hand side is all the people that respond to the rehash campaign. These are folks that were quoted but didn't buy. And then we have the folks that were working with the sales rep, and then the folks that ultimately bought. But it's important that you have this bird's eye view into all the conversations that are happening, all the information about the job. We can see here that Lauren was sent an email that said, hey, I was looking at your quote, wanted to know if there's any reason you might not want to move forward. She was sent a voicemail, text, and an email as soon as she was quoted and turned into rehash territory. And then the objection got surfaced. She said, hey, do you have any cheaper window options? And I responded and say, yeah, hey, Lauren, we actually have, a couple other window options available, some double hung and single hung windows. I was able to have this communication with her, and the sales manager is able to, from a bird's eye view, be able to see this conversation, be tagged into it if they need to, jump in, all that great stuff. It's all available inside of Hatch.
That's fantastic, Josh. And I can tell you from even the call center strategy is having that information available to make those calls and to have a full scope of the job is critical.
Yep.
If you, and again, this qualification call, if you will, set the right expectations. You may decide that you want to have just the initial, get the opportunity through Hatch, get the initial call set up, and just have your sales rep or your rehash rep make the call and do this all in one step. Do the proper set the proper expectations, and then actually do the presentation. But if you do have a situation where you want to have somebody qualify, if you're big enough to where you can have a qualifier out there, really getting in and digging in and finding out, where they're at with their decision. Are they still thinking about it? Didn't like something about it? But the more you can dig in and find out why they've stalled, if you will, but yet still interested, it's going to be real critical to setting the table to what you're going to do in the presentation. And then the second thing is making sure they clearly understand the next steps. What you're going to do, how you're going to do it, how long it's going to take, do you think, and so that when you do get them on the phone for that sales call, that they're already kind of, let's say, qualified or primed to be open to a sales presentation at that time. So one of the things too, if we talk about, the communication strategy is creating the opportunity. That's what Hatch does so well, automates it for you, makes it easy, runs in the background. But once that opportunity presents itself, you got to make sure you're ready for it. And that's familiarizing yourself with all of the information that's available for that job. And again, this is a sales presentation as well as informative. Using One Click Contractor makes that really easy because we capture everything. If your salespeople are using One Click for the initial sales call, it's going to retain that job folder forever. We've been in business for 4 years and we have yet to delete a job folder, so your records will be there for as long as you need them to be there. But in essence, when that person's done with that sales call, immediately, if it's an administrator or a rehash rep, they can log in and see that job and see exactly what was done as I explained earlier. The proposal will be there, the agreement if they went to that step, the detailed estimates, the job notes, the photos, the measurements, any other things they did, and there's a history tab that will show you exactly what they did during that call. Did they use this presentation tool? Did they use this PowerPoint? Did they play this video? Whatever they did, so you have as much information as you can possibly get without actually being on the sales call. That's going to be a huge advantage to you. The next thing is virtual presentation to close the deal. Is how do you set that up and how do you do that? And again, with One Click, we have some great tools to help make that really easy for you. Obviously, start with scheduling a virtual appointment. And again, using Hatch, you can get through a lot of those processes automatically and automated. We have a built-in screen share / video conferencing tool inside One Click Contractor. It's a web-based tool, so all you do is send an invite to the customer. They click on the button, it opens up in their web browser, no extensions to download, no software, no apps, anything. It just works almost all the time. And it is now going to be two-way where you can share your screen and they can share theirs. Don't be surprised when the customer doesn't share their screen back. Our experience with our contractors using this today, say 80% plus of the time, the homeowner will not turn on their screen share. But you do have that opportunity, and you also can go to a full screen share and do presentations with materials. You can show product. You can do whatever you want to with that screen share. Review your project details. Again, you're going to have the estimate, the measurements, the proposal, the products that were quoted, everything that was done, the specifications that you need to talk to that customer about. And then once you've gone through that whole thing, you've now got the proposal in front of you. You can review the proposal with the customer, and you can identify if there's any issues, what kind of objections they have, and then you can go for the close. You will be the best equipped person making that call that you can imagine once you have all this information in front of you.
Yeah, it's interesting, Bill. Before COVID, when all that hit, we were having, I think it was like less than 50 virtual appointments being set inside of Hatch. And then as soon as the pandemic hit and folks were needing to shift to a more virtual environment, that increased to 500 in just 1 month. So it's definitely here to stay, and it's more convenient. It saves your entire team time just to do it virtually too.
Yeah, and we've had, Josh, thank you for that. We've had some of our contractors have been using this and doing virtual presentations for 2 years, 3 years, even 3.5 years. Some of them joined us very early on, and we've got one in particular that's used it that did a survey after it, and after the virtual presentation, closing at a very, very high rate, and came back with the survey for their customers, and 93% said that they would prefer a virtual presentation to an in-home presentation. That was before COVID. I can only imagine that might even be higher now. But again, I think the emphasis here is really focus on, as we talked earlier, your methodology. You've got to be able to be very comfortable making a strong presentation virtually without being in the home, not being able to read the customer as well as you'd like. So strategies for selling and closing the deal. There's mostly going to be the same as the initial sales call, but there's going to be a few differences, especially when you talk about doing it virtually or over the phone, whatever you're doing. The differences really are you want to create as many tie downs as you can, and I call them tiebacks. And tie downs and tiebacks for some can be the same, but tiebacks are going to be commitments to the product, the project, the service, the installation. It's going to be more the technical commitments that I'm going to get out of it that I can go back to at the close. And then tie downs are just confirmation during the process that the homeowner's with you. A lot of people sometimes get into just talking and talking and talking without looking for confirmation. The more tie downs you can do through the process, the better it's going to be. And it's harder when you're doing it virtually. But again, probably 2-to-1, 3-to-1 tie downs to an in-person sales call would be necessary with a virtual sales call. The second thing is your discounts have to be legitimate. So as you saw in the example Josh gave where they said, hey, look, we've got a lot of inventory. COVID slowed us down. We'd be ready to give you a really good discount. Take advantage of this buying opportunity. Let's go. It needs to be legitimate in the customer's mind. If you're just calling them up and saying, hey, I'm going to give you a discount if I can close your deal, homeowners thinking, well, why didn't you do that when you were here the first time? It doesn't feel really good sometimes. So give them a solid reason why you're doing it. One of the ones that are really popular is a scheduling discount. During the COVID periods, we had people using what we called the Patriot close, to where, hey, look, I want to keep my company working. I've got some slack in my schedule. If you guys could see your way to going forward, I can give you a $1,000 discount on your project. Boom. We had one contractor try that. He texted out about 25 or 30 accounts or jobs that he had quoted in the last 20, 25 days, and he closed 3 of them just through a text exchange like that.
Wow.
So it's really powerful. The second one, change specification. And again, Josh mentioned that as well. Hey, do you have a lesser window, or can I do something different to lower the price? And that's very common, where if you're going ahead and quote them the Cadillac and give them the price on it, and they're kind of him and hawing, you've done everything else right. You've answered all their objections. They're just kind of having trouble getting to that price. Then you can come back and quote them either lesser shingle, go from a synthetic underlayment to 30-pound felt. Whatever you may decide to do is whatever's right for your business. Change the specifications a little bit. Ensure them that they're going to be getting close to the same quality and the same warranty that you would give them any other time. And then you're going to be able to lower the price and hopefully, overcome that value projection or perception. And then the other one is you can try is the sunk cost, which is basically just talking about the fact that, hey, we've already been out there, we've already done all the work. I'm sitting here right now with all the information in front of me. If you're willing to do that, you're going to be dealing directly with the owner or directly with the business now, not through the salesperson. I can go ahead and pass on some of those savings to you. So whatever your message is to the customer, just make sure that you're looking at it from their perspective and they feel like it's going to be legitimate. Does it make sense to them? And then the last thing is really just making sure you've got an entire defined rehash sales process. And again, incorporating all these little differences. There's more you can identify, more differences you can tweak a little bit. But if you have a defined rehash sales process, it will guarantee you better success out the backside. And when you're doing virtual sales, it's a great idea to get one of your coworkers on the other side of a computer screen and just practice, because it's really important that, rather than just focusing on the information, you bring in some, vocal animation, if you will, to the presentation to keep it exciting. And this is just an example of what Josh presented before with the text messages. And this is one of the text messages that our guy sent out that closed 3 deals, I think out of 25 or 30 of them. So, a really nice little capture. I think it was over $50,000 worth of business in just basically about 3 hours worth of work sending out those text messages. So the question, would you be interested in these software platforms if you were able to close 1 or 2 more jobs a month with an effective rehash strategy? The point being is, if you utilize that and we can close to 1 to 2 more jobs incrementally than what you're closing today, you would basically pay for Hatch and One Click Contractor, and you could operate it not only on the rehash side, but also on the front end of your business, improving your appointments, improving your sit rate, improving your close rate, your documentation, easing your administrative cost. There's a ton of benefits we can go into in detail if you'd like to talk further, but I think the question is, does it make sense? And at the end here, we've got some specials for you guys. Thank you for your attention at this point, but the rehash special for us is that we are offering $100 off an annual subscription for your seat licenses. Take advantage of that. And then if you also come on board with our Quick Start program, because of its structure, we can get you up and running with One Click in 48 hours. There's another step to go through to get a full estimator working, but that can come later. But if you do have an interest, we can get you up and running really quick and save you some money at the same time.
That's awesome, Bill. And from our side, we're offering a free rehash program where you go to freerehash.com, put in your number there, and we'll get you started with a free rehash campaign where you sign off on all the messaging. Like I talked about earlier, it's going to require multiple touches across text, email, phone, voicemail. We'll set that all up for you, hit launch together, and you'll see all the leads come in, folks that are surfacing objections, folks that are ready to buy. And typically from a free rehash campaign, you'll typically get 1 to 2 deals we typically see in the first couple days. So we'll give you full access to Hatch and allow you to run a free rehash, see what Hatch is all about. And I'm really excited about this partnership, Bill. I think it really tells a good story today when we talked about rehash, how you've got to have a communication strategy just to get the lead to bite, right? And then you've got to execute on that from the entire sales process perspective. So I think Hatch and One Click, it's a good combination, a winning combination.
Josh, I'm sitting here thinking and saying, if I'd have known about One Click Contractor and Hatch before I sold my business, I might not have sold it. I mean, this is powerful stuff. And guys, I say that, you heard earlier, I'm 40 years in the business, so I'm getting to that point where it should be about fun, and it is. I was blessed to join One Click Contractor, and I've seen the power of what it can do and how it can empower an organization to success. And then when I came upon and got together with Hatch, I was looking at this thing and going, my goodness, this is so powerful. And honestly, in the long run, so affordable for making your business that much better. It's just a no-brainer.
Yep. So let's end this with a couple takeaways you can bring to your business. The first step is, or the first takeaway is, we all have great intentions. It was, I think, 43% of you guys on the webinar today said very clearly we all have great intentions, but you haven't implemented a rehash program in your business and haven't had the time to follow up. It's easy to put off, right? So the solution here is, have a tried and true strategy to follow up with leads, like we mentioned before, via text, email, phone. Follow up with those leads as soon as you quote them. And don't just follow up with them once, follow up with them for multiple days, because typically it takes between 2 to 5 touches before they respond. So make sure that you're following up with them and then engaging with them and having a process to engage with them throughout that entire sales process. And of course, like we talked about today, there's technology out there that helps make Rehash easy, whether it be messaging homeowners, managing that entire sales process, quoting them, running virtual appointments, especially now during some social distancing. It's more important now more than ever to do virtual. So there's technology out there, and we obviously would prefer that you work with us. We work really well together, Hatch and One Click.
And so, yeah, Josh, that's exactly right. And I think, again, as we said earlier, selling 2 additional jobs using Rehash would pay for your monthly fees and monthly subscriptions for One Click Contractor and Hatch, not only for Rehash, but for using it within your entire business. So I will guarantee if you're running 50, 60, 80, 100, 200, 300 appointments a month, if not more, by the time you take this in place, closing 2 additional jobs is really just so simple. And given the technology we've shown you, some of the methodology we've talked about, that should be something that should be easily achievable for everyone. And lastly, the question, I'd rephrase it differently. Can you afford not to do this? It just makes a lot of sense. Again, I've been in the business for so long, and when I saw Hatch and put it together with One Click, and I'm saying, this is the Rehash secret sauce. This is what makes these programs executable no matter what size of company you are. It makes it consistent, makes it reliable. It gives you scalable. You can do it for small businesses and large businesses. It just makes too much sense.
Great. And if you're interested in learning more about Hatch, One Click, both of us, neither of us, let us know in the poll and we'll reach out. Hope you guys got some good takeaways, regardless of if you're interested in Hatch or One Click Contractor, to implement Rehash in your business. Again, following up on those leads within 48 hours, that's a key piece. Making sure that you are engaging with that lead throughout that entire sales process. I think it was really cool when Bill showed the effectiveness of running virtual appointments, keeping organized, having all your data in one place. I think it's great. So thanks for your participation. We'll reach out, show you our companies and our capabilities. We've got a lot of experience. I know One Click, Bill, you guys have been in business for around 4 years.
That's correct. Yep.
And we have as well. And we started as a sales consulting organization for home improvement, and then decided to make a product into what was working so well, and that's effective homeowner messaging. So really excited for this partnership. And now we're going to head into the Q&A portion of this webinar. Rachel, do we have some questions?
We do have a couple of questions. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Perfect. We have a question around integration. So Bill, if you could answer this from the One Click side, and if Josh, you could answer from the Hatch side. Can you talk a little bit about the CRMs that you integrate with, and maybe some other platforms that you integrate as well, kind of to complete the tech stack?
Okay, so I'll jump Josh first. I'll go in with for One Click Contractor, we do integrate with the primary CRMs within the home improvement industry. So Market Sharp, Lead Perfection, Job Nimbus, Improve It 360, even do some Salesforce connected, integrations for larger companies. So bottom line is, if we don't have it, we can get it, as long as the other company's willing. We'll work on that API and that exchange of information. The additional integrations that we have, we use a lot of great software that's more specific. So we're integrated on the remote measurements. So Eagle View or Hover, where you can just order through our tool and the measurements will automatically import into our estimation function, and you can bring that on board. We have visualization integrations where you can bring that up. One thing we didn't mention is that we do have integrated credit card and ACH check processing built in, as well as we can put any link to any finance company that you use today in your business. So big news is, with those integrations, it allows you to stay all within inside the One Click Contractor platform and totally conduct and complete the sales call all the way down to getting paid.
Yeah, that's great, Bill. Similar to us, we integrate with all the CRMs, all the major ones, Market Sharp, Improve It 360, Salesforce, you name it. And the goal here is for us to pull in those leads based upon their lead status or disposition. So, for example, if the lead gets marked as quoted no sale or sit no sale, like we talked about earlier, we'd automatically pull them into Hatch, launch them into that Rehash campaign. Or, if a lead comes in on your web form on your website, pops up in the CRM as new inbound lead, we automatically send them a text. So we talk directly with all the major CRMs, and we work with some financing companies as well for you to just drop your financing link, because financing is been important now more than ever from what I've seen with our customers. So we integrate with the best in the business.
Awesome. Couple other questions. We have a couple of folks that are kind of at various stages of their progression in the Rehash process. What would you both say is one thing that you can do to get started? I know that we shared a lot of information today, but where would you start with a Rehash program?
Yeah, Rachel, I can start if that's all right. I think the most important thing to start is know who to rehash. Bill, you talked about this earlier. It's important to know who you actually need to go after and have an organized CRM. If you've got a CRM in place, I know One Click has a light CRM if you don't have one. And it's important to know the disposition of that lead. Are they quoted no sale? How long's it been? All that stuff. That needs to be, make sure that you're tracking that. And your sales reps are accountable to making sure they're updating the CRM with that information. So the first step is obviously knowing who to rehash, who have you quoted and not bought. And then from the messaging standpoint, have a messaging strategy in place and the language in place that's going to be reflective over what the lead was interested in. So if you're going to launch, a rehash campaign, for example, for somebody in your exterior company, you do siding and roofing. You want to make sure you're personalized and talk to them about their roofing quote if they're a roofing lead, not a siding quote. Or don't be generic, be personalized and be upfront. And of course, follow up with the lead as many times as you can until they ultimately respond.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything Josh said there. I think, again, making sure that you have a process inside the business to identify those leads that are ready to be rehashed, and it can be through the communication structure that you get with Hatch, which would do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. But importantly, it's also making sure that you have clear expectations with your sales force. It's not wrong to have your sales force do the rehash if you think that they're willing and capable of doing that. Success, I think, in a lot of cases is driven by having a separate person doing that. But again, if you have that where you can identify the lead and get that communication to them as soon as possible, I think that's going to be the first step.
Great. Thank you both for that. One other question. So for those, I'm going to take the other side of the spectrum. So if I've already been doing Rehash for a while and I have a more advanced program, would you recommend having a dedicated person that would rehash all the sales team's lead? And kind of like how would that work? Like, how would I pass those leads off, or how would I dictate when I would send those leads over to that rehash rep? Or is there a better mousetrap?
I can take that first. I think there's again, what we talked earlier, the dedicated person, it's so much knowing kind of how to do that. What's the differences in that sales call from either an in-person or the first initial call to a rehash call, and having somebody skilled at doing that. Sales consultants, if they're really good and experienced, can probably navigate that and make it sound fresh and new. But I think if you've got somebody who is doing just rehash, they can really hone in and work with them to hone in that message and that process of how you approach that customer and how you take them through the revisit, the going back through everything and bringing them again back to that position where you can close them. So that seems to work really well. And again, with the technologies available for you, that becomes just very possible to do.
Yeah, and a big thing that we're seeing is folks are inventorying all of the objections. So they catalog every time there's an objection. And so the most common objections in the business, they'll make sure they're training the reps. If they've got a dedicated rehash rep, or if they've got a sales reps doing rehash, making sure they're continually training on what's working best to handle objections. So make sure you have visibility into how objections have been handled in the past and what objections have come up, and what have been the best methods to handling those objections that have resulted in one business. That's really important. So you can't improve what you can't measure. So it's important that you're tracking all that good stuff.
Awesome. And then I'm going to actually ask this question and then answer it for someone who's on the line. So they're asking to see this in action. They want to see a demo of how One Click and Hatch would work together. And so what I would recommend is reach out to both these teams. We will be following up after the webinar with you all, giving you a recording of the webinar. And we would love to set something up with you to show you how these two platforms work together. So with that, I think we've answered all of our questions today. So thank you all for your participation. And with that, Josh, I'm actually going to close the webinar for today. I thank everybody for attending, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.